service in this time frame. Very rigid programmatic responses to identified need. This new system is going to unbundle all of those arrangements. It's going to unpick them all. Any program that currently devotes dollars to disability supports for people across Australia, eventually that money will be uncoupled from the program. All of that cash is going to flow into a single national bucket for disability support across Australia, which will then give people with disability the maximum flexibility in what they choose in terms of their disability supports, who provides it, how it is provided. But an enormous change. I don't think I need to convince you about that. We're going to use an insurance approach. So what this really means is that vast amounts of data are going to be gathered over time. So we're very, very new. So we've just had 9 months of operation since the 1st of July last year. If you want to think about it in terms of a lifetime, we're a baby. You know, we've only just been born. I think by 9 months kids are generally crawling, yeah? So, you know, we're on our hands and knees, we're making our way forward, but clearly we're going to bump into things, you know, we're going to get things wrong, we're going to have to learn to crawl, you know, that cross pattern, that's the best way to do it. So we're moving towards that kind of goal, and hopefully by the end of the first year, like most toddlers, we'll be on our feet. What the insurance approach does, though, is gather all of the data about the outcomes for every individual. This is what's most important. Obviously, all of us want the scheme to be sustainable over the long term. There's absolutely no point starting something like this and have it fail in 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years. And so data about the outcomes for individuals, in other words, the disability supports that people are receiving under the scheme, and the difference that actually makes to their lives, in other words, the level of participation they're able to take on because of the supports they're getting under the scheme, is going to be gathered absolutely carefully for every person, monitored regularly. We have a unit of scheme actuaries who've been employed to look just at those things. And so over time we'll get a much, much better picture, an evidence base if you like, about what does work for individuals in their individual circumstances, but also be able to aggregate that data up to say, for this group of people, this is what seems to work best. And you can see all of that will feed into the future planning for the scheme. So choice and control is central, and I'm pretty sure I don't need to convince any of you about the fundamental importance of individuals being able to exercise choice and control. This is a fundamental human right. And yet the reality is that for people with disability, often they have not had the opportunity to exercise choice or to exercise control over the way they live their lives. And in this scheme, that extends to choice and control over the types of supports they receive, how they receive them, who provides them, and under what circumstances. The other fundamental difference, if we go back to that idea of a need being identified, a program being developed, these are very narrow strictures. So they are not needs driven. All programs have a funding cap, and once you get to that cap, nobody else can access the funding under that program. That's the way it works. This is not a capped scheme. So people are not given a ceiling to which they can buy services that they need. Their plan is constructed according to their individual circumstances, their individual disability support needs. And whatever the figure is that comes out at the end of that process, that is what that person is allocated under the scheme. That's a fundamental difference. It's delivered in local communities, obviously. You are part of that local community, so yay, you're in there, boots and all. And we are working towards national coverage. So again, I don't think I'm going to need to convince this audience about the importance of starting small, of getting it right, of making adjustments and improvements as we go along to make sure that by the time we get to that point where we're going to ramp up from the first 3 years of trial sites to a rollout that's going to go across the nation, we need to have the settings pretty well right. So these first 3 years are going to be crucial in informing the people who are the scheme architects, all the jurisdictions who've bought in, including the ACT, that we can roll it out in a way that's going to be there for the nation in decades to come.